Um, well, what we can do is we can actually do what you're asking, which is to mention that yes, there are several places that are available here. Um, there's several Wats on this island worth visiting. Currently, Cathal is at Wat Rusi Pa Siang Tang, which is on the other side of the island, and the abbot there is very, very
Sorry.
friendly for
Sorry.
having questions.
The island name. What is it? The name of the island?
Kopangan.
Ah, Kopangan. Of course, I know. I was there before. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm gonna take the notes.
So
And
you
you're
don't have to
saying,
take notes because these
uh
will be available easy enough.
oh,
Okay.
okay, perfect. Okay, perfect. Nice.
Over on Koh Samui, there is also Deepa Bhawan, which is a meditation retreat center, but it also is the home of several of my friends who are ordained. Excuse me, Achan Po is there in resident, and also an English monk by the name of Achan Dhammaratog, and they run retreats that are highly, highly regarded.
Okay. Only one thing, sir, I would like to, as the retreat usually lasts for maybe 10
7
days.
days.
Yeah, I would like really a place where I can stay kind of 1
That's
month.
why I. That's what I mentioned. What Rusi Pa Siang Tang, because you can stay there a longer time, but you can go back and forth. You don't have to do just one thing.
Back and forth from where?
Like I said, Deepa Bhawan is on Koh Samui,
Uh-huh.
and the Wat I mentioned is here on this island.
Okay.
But there is so much available in Thailand. There is a lot of stuff happening up in Chiang Mai area. That in fact, Daniel is in the process of ordination, and I think David just ordained. Um, about 6 months ago, Eric ordained, and now he's staying at a Wat in Laos. And before that, Bhante Kimasitu ordained at Antong, and then spent time at Wat Mahatad in Bangkok, and now he's in Manchester, England, at a student Wat of theirs, Wat Mahatad in Manchester. So there's a lot of stuff available here in
That's
Thailand.
oh wow,
And
brilliant.
you were here, I mean, that people will walk down the street and walk right past a storefront, not giving it a second notice, and that's the place they need to go, but they don't know it. But that's part of what we're doing here is to get the information out so that people can figure out things and find where to go and that sort of stuff.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah. Ideally, would like maybe a place where maybe they are quite strong with the teaching, and the monk, hopefully they will speak English, so there is maybe a better communication, a better transmission.
Yeah, like
And
I said, he's an English monk.
okay,
Achan Dhammavitu is an English monk, so he
okay,
teaches in English.
okay, beautiful. And
I don't know
Dhammarato
who you said it was a couple of months ago. Who was the teacher that you had at Wat Suan Mok? Was it Ben?
was a German, John Wag. John, it seems from Germany. Was a old
Was it
man.
Reinhardt? Was his
Was
name?
an old man with white hair,
Do you remember
and
his name?
uh, maybe with a J, like a Jog, Jog, I don't remember his name, but I think he's from Germany. Like he probably is 70, around 70, 60, 70 years old, and how can I describe him? He's white hair, without beard.
I
Uh,
think that I know who you're talking about, but if you remembered his name, that would have been good.
I don't remember. I have to ask her probably.
Okay.
I have to ask. And
So, today, do you want to talk about the Dhamma? You called
uh-huh.
because that's what I do mostly. Is that,
Okay.
especially for new teachers or new
Beautiful.
students, is that we cover the basics,
Uh,
and we cover the basics in a super mundane way. Normally, the basics are taught for basic people. By the way, your background is very noisy. You've got a lot of people talking.
yeah, right now, yeah. They 1 second that let me move in a place where there
No,
are less.
another thing you can do though is you can turn your microphone off. You can mute your
Ah,
microphone.
nice. Yeah, I can do that. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so that's a lot better. As I was saying, that mostly when the Dhamma is taught, it's taught at an ordinary level, going through the basics in an ordinary kind of way. And what I mean by ordinary is that it's kind of the Buddhism for everybody. But I've been instructed from Achan Po to teach the super mundane Dhamma, the high quality Dhamma. So when I talk about basics, I'm talking about advanced basics. Because ordinary Dhamma has a lot of ordinary people with an ordinary frame of reference, having ordinary belief systems. And so, in that regard, they follow the Eightfold Noble Path in the way of Sila, Samadhi, Panya. You probably heard that expression before. Sila, Samadhi, Panya.
It's really actually, but okay.
I'm sorry, what did you say? You turned
No,
mic.
I didn't hear this. I didn't hear this word before.
You,
Panya.
okay, Sila, Samadhi, Panya is Sila is morality or our behavior around other people. This is what we have in the sense of the precepts. You probably heard the precepts like Panatapata Veramani
Yes.
Sakabadam Samatiyami Atenadana Veramani Sakabadam. Okay, so that's Sila. And the idea that is that when your Sila is perfect, when it's purified, then you go to Samadhi, which means the sitting meditation to get the mind together, to get it organized. And then we go from that to Panya, which means getting the mind's right view, so that you go from right action to right clarity of mind to right understanding, right? That's the basic way of practicing. Okay, once we get that wisdom or that Panya, now the student can start on the Eightfold Noble Path in a noble way. It really becomes noble. And that's when we start with Panya. We start with Panya, and then we do Samadhi, which now means a better organization of mind, leading to the mind that's noble, then is not going to harm himself or other people. And so the result then is going to be Sila. So there's actually two Eightfold Noble Paths. The first one for ordinary people, the one that you've been taught more than likely, is Sila Samadhi Panya, but that the true way of practice is, for the nobles, is Panya Sila Samadhi. Excuse me, Panya Samadhi Sila. All right, so let's talk about what that means. Basically, we're going to start with what the teacher, the Buddha, said that he taught. And he said that he taught only one thing, and that is dukkha, dukkha nirodha, which means suffering and the end of suffering. Now, in the ordinary sense, we think of suffering and the end of suffering takes a long time. And for ordinary people, it seems to take a long time the way that they practice. All right. But dukkha, dukkha nirodha is actually something that happens immediately. That as soon as you see the dukkha, you come out of it immediately into dukkha nirodha. All right. There's another point that's very important. And that is that though the Buddha says that he teaches only one thing, and that is dukkha, dukkha, nirodha, which is actually the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Noble Path. In the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, the very first sutta that he gave, the very first thing that he taught was the middle path. And the middle path means between two extremes. And that if we were at one extreme or the other, that's dukkha. But when we come to the middle path and to the middle point, what we can call actually the sweet spot, that's when the suffering ends and it's into dukkha nirodha, or what we can call satisfaction. A lot of people in the West think that Buddhism is all about attaining this, like Sotapanna or jhanas or past life experiences or arahat or enlightenment or nibbana or all of that kind of stuff, or attainments, right? Wanting this stuff is dukkha. Wanting things that you don't have is dukkha. And so what we need to practice right from the very beginning of the supramundane Dhamma is to get ourselves into that sweet spot immediately, to get into the middle position. And so when someone's at one extreme and they look at the other extreme and they see the things in the middle, they think that what is the middle is the same as the other extreme. For instance, if this is one extreme and this is the other, and I look in that direction and I see something here, I think it's the other extreme. Okay? And so when I teach stuff, a lot of people will take it not as the middle path, but as an extreme. An example would be the Japanese Zen haiku of no place to go and nothing to do, and the spring comes and the grass grows by itself. Now, one extreme would be that people are busy. They're wanting things. They're traveling. They go around. They're jumping from this, that, and the other thing, thinking that wherever they are now is not good enough, that someplace else is going to be better. And so when we start to teach the middle path, we use it in the sense of, okay, practice for a while, no place to go and nothing to do. And that the extreme of that would be there's never any place to go and never anything to do, and people will lay in bed all the time with no place to go and nothing to do, except that they do have to go to the bathroom, they do have to eat, they will not stay in bed, right? And so that's an extreme. So when we're talking about the teaching of the Buddha in the Eightfold Noble Path, we always need to keep track of the fact that this is a middle way, a middle path. It's not an extreme. And as we continue to practice the middle path and the middle way and staying in the middle, we wind up arriving at these stages of progression. But if you want those stages, you're not going to get them. It's like you cannot have what you want, but you can have what comes to you when you're ready for it. An easy example of that is, imagine that you walk into a room and close the door, and when you close the door, it's absolutely dark. There is nothing that you can see. You are completely blind. It's an ordinary room with ordinary furniture, and a black cat is in the room. And your intention is to catch the black cat. How are you going to catch the black cat? You're going to listen to where he is, and then you're going to go and start moving furniture around and all of that kind of stuff, groping and whatever like that to try to catch that black cat. And that's not the way to catch the cat. The way to catch the cat is when you go into the room, you sit down on the floor and wait, and the cat will come to you. But if you want that cat and you go chase that cat, you can't catch it.
I feel like me in this moment that I'm looking the best place to catch the cat, but there is nothing to do.
It is right here, right now, yes. So when the Buddha says that he only teaches one thing, dukkha, dukkha, nirodha, that means that we can come out of our chasing our black cats. Stop chasing after spiritual attainments. Stop wanting anything and come to see that things that as they are good enough. If things are good enough, then that means that you're in a state of dukkha nirodha, which is actually the third noble truth. That you can find that sweet spot. You can find a place where you're comfortable, secure, safe, satisfied. And we'll talk about safe, secure, comfortable, and satisfied in just a moment. But that's the sweet spot. But in order to be able to understand dukkha, you have to understand, or everyone has to understand, what's the cause of dukkha? Where does it come from? Because a lot of people in the West will blame God. They even have it in our laws about the acts of God. Oh, we're not going to pay for your house getting blown over because it got blown over by the wind, and the wind's an act of God. So your house insurance is not as good as you thought it was, because we have an exception that we can blame it on God, and then we don't have to fix your house. So when this sort of thing happens, we miss out on the fact that all dukkha, all dissatisfactions, all uncomfortableness comes within your own mind. It does not come from the outside. A little example of that was in December 2004. There was a huge tsunami that hit Thailand. It hit a whole, obviously a great big area, but I'm most familiar with what happened at Phuket. And all of the Westerners, you could see the videos. They were getting swept up, and the water came, and the furniture got moved around, and all these people got swept up. But a few hours before the tsunami hit, the elephants broke free from their tethers and headed for the mountain. Meanwhile, the story is that there was one guy that had his elephant already up on the mountain. He was the elephant was gathering food for the other elephants, and when it was time to go back down the hill, this elephant wouldn't go down the hill. He would not go, and so the manager, the minute, worked and worked and worked with this elephant, and after a while, all of the other elephants in that compound come running up, followed then by all of the men and all the trainers who had chased the elephants up. Here's the point. The elephants knew that there was going to be a tsunami, but the people didn't. And so the people suffered not because of the tsunami, they suffered because of their stupidity and ignorance of the tsunami. The elephants knew it were coming. The elephants headed for the hills, and the elephants were safe. And the people who headed for the hills to chase the elephants, they were also safe. But all of the Westerners, all of the tourists that were on the beach, they got swallowed up by the waves because of their ignorance. They didn't know it was coming. This is, in fact, the point about the Eightfold Noble Path, and especially the Four Noble Truths, the second Noble Truth. Probably in India, maybe even heard that the second Noble Truth means that dukkha, or suffering, is caused by attachment.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
caused by clinging.
Yeah.
Okay, it's not. It's caused by ignorant clinging. It's caused by ignorant attachment. If your attachments are wise, then you are going to have benefit. But if your attachments are ignorant and stupid and delusional, then you're going to suffer. And so the Eightfold Noble Path and the Four Noble Truths, especially the second Noble Truth, is all about ignorance. It's about stupidity in regard to our own feelings. The feelings of liking and not liking get transferred from liking and not liking into wanting. And wanting goes into clinging. And when we cling ignorantly, we're going to suffer for that. Because why? Because we want things that we don't have. If you can see that you want something that you don't have and recognize, oh, well, I don't have it, let me stop wanting it. If I want something, I'm going to suffer if I don't have it. And if it's hard to get, then I have to work at trying to maintain it. And then when I do lose it, I'll really suffer. So the better thing to do is to not want it in the first place, to be content and satisfied with the way things are. All right. So we're looking now then at the Eightfold Noble Path most specifically, because this is where this comes from. You've heard the Eightfold Noble Path. In fact, the Eightfold Noble Path is what I mentioned before about Sila Samadhi Panya, except that when the Panya comes, now the path is different. The Noble Path is right view. Now, right view versus wrong view, most people think the view is a viewpoint or a position or a worldview or a story or a concept about the way things should be. But noble right view actually is not a noun, it's a verb. It's noble right viewing, looking, investigating, checking it out, looking at it again, reading a passage over and over again until you really understand what's being said. And we also have to look over and over again to read what's in our mind, over and over and over again. And so this is what right view, actually right viewing, is all about. And so if we can have right view, then we can do something about it. That in fact, the point about right view is that we have to remember to look. If we don't remember to look, we're not going to look. And so this is where the word sati comes in. You probably heard the word sati before. Okay, sati is not mindfulness. Sati is the ability to remember to come into the present moment and look. Sati is the ability to wake up out of your dreams, out of the past, out of your wants, out of your desires, out of your future plans, and come right to this present moment and take a look at what you're doing right now. This is what it's all about. And
awareness, having awareness. So having awareness.
well,
basically.
maybe you can talk about it as awareness, but that's a pretty sloppy word. Another way of talking about it would be to pay attention. Okay, in fact, pay attention has the quality that it takes a bit of effort to pay attention. Awareness is often too easy. That we actually take effort to look, to investigate, to pay attention to what the mind is doing. Because if we can see what it's doing in regard to that this is dukkha, this is suffering, this is unwholesome, then we can change it from unwholesome to wholesome. This change that we're making is actually the full-blown right noble effort. Right noble effort is to stop unwholesome thoughts, unwholesome speech, unwholesome deeds. That in fact, the mind comes first. So if we can stop it in the mind, if you don't have unwholesome thoughts in the mind, then you're not going to have unwholesome speech. If you don't have any unwholesome speech, then you're not going to have any unwholesome actions. So it's all about the mind. The mind is the forerunner. So if we can remember to wake up and to take a look and make a change, this is the Eightfold Noble Path. This is 3 steps of the Eightfold Noble Path. So this change model is extremely important. So when we put the Eightfold Noble Path with its companion, that in fact one of them is 117 and the other one is 118 in the Majjhima Nikaya. So the Anapanasati Sutta is a good follow-on to this sutta about the Eightfold Noble Path, which is, by the way, named the Great 40, number 117. And that Bhikkhu Buddhadasa caused to stir and a lot of research, but they proved that he was right when the Buddha said, or when Bhikkhu Buddhadasa said that the Buddha only taught one meditation practice, only one. And yet in ordinary Buddhism, they like to pontificate and add things together, and so they wind up with 40 meditations. And that was a long time ago. Now there's just all kinds of stuff. New Agey meditations all over the place. But the Buddha only taught one form of meditation. And that was Anapanasati.
Oh, beautiful. The Swamok one.
Pardon?
The one that they teach, the Swamok.
Well, I'm not sure what this German guy is teaching because I don't know who he is, so I can't vouch for him. But if he's teaching correctly, that would be what he was teaching. That you use the word vipassana, but I don't use the word vipassana because it doesn't appear in the sutras often. It only appears in later literature. But what the word vipassana means is to look deeply. Okay? But we think of it as insight. Now, insight means that after you perhaps looked at something, then you can see what it is and you see it, okay? So insight or vipassana is not actually what we're doing. What we're doing is investigation. We're looking. And we're looking with discernment in the sense of whatever this is, does it fit into the classification of is it wholesome or is it not wholesome? The thought. Go ahead.
I'm saying, yeah, there is the insight that we get out of the investigation. So before there is always the investigation and then the insight.
Actually, that may not be the case. And what's the point of having an insight if you don't remember to act upon that insight later? That a lot of people go around talking about insight meditation this and vipassana that, and that's not really what we need to do. What we really need to do is to look at what thoughts we're having in the context. Is this thought right now wholesome or is it unwholesome? That's not a great big insight. That's a little kind of thing. Because if you can see that the thought that you have is not wholesome, then you can change it to wholesome. An example of that is that you just had an argument with grandma. And then you go to sit down in meditation, and now you're thinking about that argument that you had with grandma. You don't like it. You want to fix her. You want to prove that she was wrong. And so here we are wasting our time in meditation because we're thinking about something that's not important. All right? But if we could change that thought, recognize that all thinking about grandma is not useful. We can see, in fact, that Granny's not even here, that I'm wasting my thoughts by thinking about her. Then, in fact, we could actually change it from I'm going to get her back into, wow, Granny really does know her stuff. She really did defeat me in that. I've got to pay respect to her. And so we change it from the unwholesome thought, I'm going to get her back, into the wholesome thought of, wow, I respect her for her skills. So we change our thoughts from unwholesome thoughts to wholesome thoughts. We change whatever thought that we're having. Like, in fact, you can have the thought of, oh, I've got to go to the bank. I've got to get this book and I got to change that amount and I've got to do this, that, and the other thing. But you're not at the bank. If you're not at the bank, then thinking about the bank is unwholesome. It's not here. We're thinking about something that's not real. The bank that we're going to is the bank in our head, not the actual bank. And so sitting and thinking about, I got to go to the bank, I got to go to the bank, I got to go to the bank is unwholesome. We can say, right now, I'm not at the bank. Why should I think about the bank? Let me think about nothing at all because I'm not going anyplace at all. I can sit here and be happy and do nothing. Or we can go so far as to say, wow, I don't have to go to the bank right now. Or we can say, wow, I don't have to fight and argue with Aunt Susie right now or Granny. I can just be happy. So this whole point is to change our thoughts. Now, this is actually
What
in the Anapanasati Sutta. It's called gladdening the mind, to brighten the mind, to change your attitude. So go ahead, you got a question.
and why do not change the fault, but just not having any fault? What do you think about that?
I think that you're wanting something that you don't have and can't get. You're wanting to stop a car that doesn't have brakes. Imagine a great big container ship, and here you are going off in the wrong direction. That great big ship does not have brakes. You can't stop that big ship. But what you can do is steer it. You can change its course. Okay? But stopping the mind has got to do with, let us say, a fairly advanced thing. But Westerners always want to go to the advanced stuff rather than doing it the right way. An example of that is someone who has been playing the piano, taking lessons on the piano for a year, and the teacher gives them some music that they're capable of playing. But the student doesn't like that because he's heard a record of, let us say, Rhapsody in Blue, and he hears that piano piece. So he goes and he buys the piano music for Rhapsody in Blue, and he sets it down. He can't play it. He's only been practicing piano for a year. Let him play what he can play. All right? So that's where we're coming with you stopping the mind. You can't stop the mind, but you can change the thought pattern. That when you learn to control your mind, when you learn to steer the mind, then eventually you'll gain the skills, maybe to run it around into a circle, into a very, very small circle, and then it'll stop. But it's not going to stop just because you want it to, just like you can't stop a great big freighter or a big ship just because you want it to stop. It's not going to stop. It's got too much inertia, got too much power behind it. Okay, so don't try to stop the mind, divert it, change it, make it more reliable, make it more functional, make it more wholesome. That's the way that we're going to practice for a long time. Why? Because you will practice that for a while and then you'll forget, and then the unwholesome thoughts will come back. And you remember to look at those thoughts, see that they're unwholesome, and change them again into wholesome. And that's the practice over and over and over again. You've done already enough meditation to recognize you are not in control of your mind. You cannot think the thoughts you want to think. And so that's what we're going to start practicing, is to remember to look at what we're thinking about and improve it. To think about what you're, or to look at what we're thinking about, check it out, make sure that we can change it, that you can change your mind from one thing to another. You probably heard about the concept of a monkey mind. Okay? What we're not going to do is we're not going to tie the monkey down. It's still going to try to fight and struggle and probably pull up the stake you've got him tied to and go back to the tree and jump around again, because we're not really in control of it. So the way that we learn to control the monkey is by keeping it in just one tree and let it jump around in just one tree. The other example that I would give, or analogy, would be a horse that is out in the wild, out in the wilderness. There's dangers out there. There's thickets, there's canyons, there's gullies to fall into. There's all kinds of problems for the horse. But if we can put the horse into a pasture that's got a fence and keep the horse in the pasture because it's got all the goods that he needs, then he's going to settle down and be more comfortable inside the pasture. And then we can take the horse and put it into a corral. And the horse wants out of the corral, but if it's a small corral, he'll run around the corral and run around the corral, and pretty soon he'll get comfortable in the corral. And then we could put the horse in a horse stall. But you can't put a wild horse in a horse stall. He'll kick the barn down to get out of there. So we have to go through this process of taking him out of the wilderness, put him into a pasture, and then later put him into a corral, and then later we can put him into a stall. And so that mind, you're saying you want to stop the mind. That's like putting the mind in a stall, and your mind's been out in the wild. It's going to kick that stall down and get out. You cannot stop the mind, but you can corral the mind. You can put boundaries there. And the boundary that we're putting up is this wholesome or is it unwholesome? Is this thought harmful or is this thought not harmful? Is this thought beneficial? Now, a lot of the students, they'll start asking about, well, what is a wholesome thought and what is not a wholesome thought? And the answer to that is that's a skill that each individual person has to develop for themselves. We could give you some ideas. For example, thoughts of revenge, thoughts of burning down the government, thoughts of harming people is downright unwholesome thoughts. Thoughts about going and getting drunk, that's an unwholesome thought. Thought about driving a car into a tree, that's an unwholesome thought. Okay? Thoughts about harming people, definitely those are unwholesome thoughts. And yet a lot of us will have those really downright unwholesome thoughts and we're not even checking it out. We'll go ahead and think about harming Aunt Susie or harming Grandma because she defeated us. We want to defeat her back. All right? So those thoughts are unwholesome. Now, what kind of thoughts that would guaranteed that they would be wholesome? And that would be the thoughts that are about right here, right now. No place to go, nothing to do. Wow, I feel comfortable. I feel relaxed. I feel contented. I feel satisfied. Everything is okay. Everything is easy peasy. Everything's all right. No place to go, nothing to do. Wow, this is nice. Those are wholesome thoughts. So if you start having those kind of wholesome thoughts of, wow, everything is nice, everything is okay, I don't have to think about Grandma, I don't have to think about her argument, I can just sit here and enjoy life. So that's going to be wholesome. You could almost go to say that any thoughts about the past are unwholesome. Why? Because the past doesn't exist. It's gone. It isn't there. If we're having thoughts about someplace else, like you're in India, start thinking about Thailand, be careful because those may not be wholesome thoughts. If you're in India and thinking about Thailand, you're not thinking about India. You could be driving down the street in a car in India, think about Thailand, and run into somebody because you're not thinking about where you are. Okay? So these are what we mean by unwholesome thoughts would be thoughts about the past, thoughts about the future, thoughts about other places. But when we're having thoughts about right here, right now, more than likely, they're wholesome. So this is how we're going to start training the mind into having wholesome, happy thoughts. Thoughts that are comfortable, safe, secure. And so this is the basic introduction. And the way that it goes is with Anapanasati in the sense of step 9 of Anapanasati. Now, a lot of people, by the way, they think of Anapanasati as a step-by-step sequence. It's not. You cannot go into the meditation hall to work on the body, leave your feelings, your mind, and your mind's objects in the bed. And then next week you go into the meditation hall and you're going to work with feelings, leaving the body and the mind's objects in bed. Oh no, these 4 things work closely together. An example of that is that if the body is not comfortable, if the body is in a dangerous place, then it's going to be difficult to get the mind to believe that it is safe and that it's comfortable. So in order to practice correctly, we have to get the body in a safe, comfortable place. An example of that is don't go practicing meditation at the police station. The police station is not a safe place. It's noisy. It's dangerous, right? You don't go practicing on an airport runway. it's noisy, it's dangerous. You don't practice on a highway. It's noisy, it's dangerous. You don't practice in the middle of town. It's noisy, it's dangerous. We want to get away from it all. We want to actually get the body in a safe, comfortable, happy place so that we can get the mind into a safe, comfortable, happy place. And when we get the mind in a safe, comfortable, happy place, and the body is in a safe, comfortable, happy place, then we can begin to feel safe. We can begin to feel comfortable. We can begin to feel satisfied. Okay, so this is the Anapanasati Sutta part of it. And so it's not just one step after another, but rather it's working things together, learning how to fit puzzle pieces together so that you have an integration. Because the mind affects the body affects the feelings affects the mind, the feelings affect the body, they all work together. They integrate you as a whole, and yet mostly we live our lives as a crowd. The body is doing one thing and the mind is doing something else.